What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? And thank you very much for tuning into this edition of the Drop-In. You know, I bring you some of the most amazing people, some of the most incredible people on the planet. The gentleman sitting to my left is no slouch. I'll tell you what, we met, I think, over a decade ago. We've had the opportunity to sit down and talk on past podcasts, but I think now is the perfect time to really dig deep into David R. Newby, to talk to him about where he's been, what he has seen, and where he is going. I mean, I have the bestseller book sitting right here, Beyond Billions, and we're going to talk about it on this episode of The Drop-In. But I want to thank you guys so much for taking the time to spend with us, because I don't take that lightly. Your time is important to you, and you are going to spend an hour or so with us here on The Drop-In. So without much more, let's get right into it. I want to thank you so much, Dave, for taking the time to come down here. You're a busy man, and just thank you, man. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. It's great to be with you, Garold. I hope we can talk a little bit about how we met. That was pretty fun.
Oh, and that's what I want to open with, because I talk a lot about how you never know who you're going to meet or where.
Right.
And you and I ran into each other at Transition Skateboard Park down in Taylor, Michigan. You were there with your sons, and you didn't quite fit the mold of the rest of the crew there. You didn't have punky, crazy stuff going on. You were just at the half pipe, getting a feel for things, and I walked up and said, "How's it going?" You know, introduced myself, gave you a couple tips, and we've been friends almost ever since.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you never know. That is true. You never know where you're going to meet where. Yeah, a good old Van Horn. I remember my son, we were watching Robin Big, and then that was from like 5 months, and then he turned 8 that summer, and he's like, Dad, I want a skateboard for my birthday. So I go on Google and search, or on the map app, either one, skate park, Dearborn, Michigan, and Transitions pops up. So we go there. Literally for the whole first month, all we were doing was learning how to pump on the half pipe. That's it. And yeah, you were so gracious to us and kind to us. I think you met me before I started wearing my Ben Wallace afro wig in my 70s. Powder blue with pink cufflinks.
That came a few months later.
That was later, yeah. Once I got comfortable. But yeah, I mean, it was just a blast. Like, first, I buy him a board. I bought him your board, which we still have, by the way.
Oh, cool.
The Purple Heart Frankenstein head board. And my son got green grip tape, purple wheels, and then your board was like black with the green and purple. So it's like his favorite colors are green at that age. So we had a blast, and we've been skateboarding ever since. He didn't skate for a while, from like say 14 to 20, but last summer for his 21st birthday, he bought another board. So we've been going downtown to the Tony Hawk Park right by the Ambassador Bridge, and sometimes I'll drop in without my pads, but I'm still an old fogey. I still put on my pads and Tony Hawk style, safety first.
I'm right there with you, David.
Because I want to do the crazy stuff and go for a big air, and it's like those pads and helmet come in super handy if you bail and you hit something.
Yep, I fractured my skull in 2001, and I won't even drop in and take a practice run without at least my helmet on. But usually it's helmet and knee pads, no matter what.
Right.
For sure. Well, let's get right into it for our audience. And once again, thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure grab a notebook, take some notes. We always cover some different things that might improve your life, and hopefully you get up from this hour and feel like you can take over the world, because that's the goal of the show. Definitely. I want you to be the most optimal version of yourself you possibly can be, and that's why we do what we do. So with that, I want to ask you, Dave, because I don't know if we've ever covered it, and any time we've ever talked, how were you growing up? What kind of kid were you in school and in high school and stuff like that?
So I was a very high energy kid. I was a daredevil. I cracked my head open 3 times to get stitches, so I have 3 scars on my head. I could climb trees, none of my friends could climb. I used to do contests with my friends, who could jump their BMX bikes further off the garage. We would climb up with the ladder onto the garage and then ride our BMX bikes and basically bunny hop and see who could land the furthest away. I messed with the huevos a couple times there, slipping off the seat and hitting the top bar. The things we do as kids, we used to do BMX jumping contests in 7th grade. I jumped my bike like 40 feet and cracked my rear wheel. It was a mag wheel. I had a Schwinn Predator.
But we're indestructible at that age.
I know. It's just so hilarious talking about we wear pads and all the time and helmets. And I'm like jumping 40 feet on a BMX bike, building ramps at the end of a church parking lot next to our apartment complex.
Right.
And just flying. And, you know, like God is so gracious. Like the kids can kill themselves so many ways, but it's like we're way more, we can do way more than we realize. That quote, you know, our greatest fear is actually that we can do way more than we thought. Not that we're not enough. And I'm not remembering the exact quote, but I was definitely tested that. In 7th grade, I even built my own bungee cords and tied them to the top of a tree and jumped out of trees in the woods next to my house.
I love it.
So
now, did you grow up in Michigan?
6 states. I moved 47 times before
Holy
I
smokes.
got out of high school.
So,
Yeah, my first stepdad, I lived with him until I was 7. He actually tried to kill both of my brothers. His own kids. It was not his. My mom had sex with my dad one time. They grew up in Rochester Hills, Michigan. For those of you outside of Michigan, northern Metro Detroit suburbs. And I grew up when I was 6 days old. She married my stepdad, my brother's dad. So he would try to cause my mom to miscarry both times she was pregnant.
oh my word.
My first brother was born 3 months early, lived 3 months in the neonatal ICU. They told my mom, don't name this kid because he's going to die. And my mom told my brother, like, your name is Jeremy Marcus. You're going to live, fight with all you have. And 3 months later, she took him home.
Yeah. Love it.
So it's sort of weird having like this guy who had a lot of money and liked to spend time with us as kids. But he slept around with my mom, bragged to her about other women he was sleeping with, gave her just enough money to pay the bills. He was like actively abusive and adulterous and murderous. And this was my male role model.
Wow.
So a lot of my life growing up, we moved every 3 months so we wouldn't know where we lived. Because when the summer I was 8, he took us to Alaska. We lived in Alaska for the summer. His brother was a missionary to Eskimos. So we're like living with Eskimos out in the woods in Alaska. That was a blast for as a kid. But on that trip, I realized like he and my mom were not getting back together. I saw him flirting with other women, and I could sort of see it for the first time. When you're a little kid, you want to be just like your dad. They can do no wrong.
Right.
You're a little boy at least. And I could sort of see the reality of some of his selfishness for the first time. That summer I was 8. And so yeah, after that, he told my mom, now I know where you live. So then we would move all the time. He would call the schools trying to find out our address, and my mom just had to stay a step ahead of him. So
What a crazy, crazy upbringing, just having to sort of run almost like for most of your first 2 decades you were alive.
Lenny Kravitz has a song, I'm Always on the Run. That was our life growing up.
Wow.
He finally like stopped trying to find out where we were by the time I was in like around 8th grade.
Okay.
My mom got remarried when I was going into 8th grade. And so I think after that, having another guy around, like he just, faded away.
Right on. Right on. Crazy though. I mean, to move, over 40 times, it makes it very difficult to create friendships and bonds because you're always moving.
Right. Yeah, it really shaped my personality, or I would say amplified our personalities, because my brother's a more quiet person. So he was like, why bother making friends? We're going to move anyways. So he literally did not make any friends till his senior year of high school. Me, I'm like, let me make friends faster. So I'm real outgoing. So I learned to like make friends and just learn and show interest in people. And it's amazing whether you grew up in the same place your whole life or you move. It's like if you show genuine, true interest in people, like they feel that. And a lot of people just want to be seen. A lot of my Daredevil stuff was just wanting to be seen.
Right.
Because I was always a new kid, and I'm like, how do I make myself impressionable to these new kids and be accepted by them? So I would just do wild and crazy stuff.
Yeah, in my new book, which comes out next month, I talk a lot about that. About, I was fortunate to turn a lot of my drive into positive things, but it was because I didn't feel comfortable with myself. I needed that crowd, the accolades from the crowd,
right,
to keep me going, because I couldn't do it for myself. And it took me over 40 years to really fall in love with who I am. But the crowd and the accolades was what was driving me for most of my life, and I think it's a common thing that especially as youngsters we go through it most of the time, that you grow out of it. I didn't quite grow out of it for a while.
Yeah, I had a similar process. For 30 years, I had an identity of I'm rejected, I'm not good enough, because 6 months before I'm writing a memoir right now, and I didn't realize till I wrote this book. In a 6-month period, 3 people close to me died. Like my best friend, her mom cut her heart out. She thought she was demon possessed. She cut her heart out. I went to her house like 4 times a week and played Barbies with her as a black girl. We were neighbors. We lived in an apartment complex together. And
cut her heart out?
Yeah, I went to her house to play one day, and there's police tape on the door. And I was 5 going on 6. And I was just starting to learn how to read, so I couldn't quite make out what the police tape said. But then I looked through the window and knocked on the door. I climbed through the police tape. Knock on the door, no one answers. I look through the window, I'm seeing stuff on the wall. Now I realize it was my friend's blood.
No way.
But my mom didn't tell me till I was 16 that that's what happened to her. So, it's by God's grace I wasn't at her house when her mom came at her with the butcher knife.
Right.
That I could have been killed too. And then my stepdad told me he wouldn't adopt me. So that was very crushing to my identity. Like my dad's not on my birth certificate, and then my stepdad tells me he's not going to adopt me.
Right.
So from 7 to 37, I carried around this rejection identity. And then there was a multi-year process of God healing my heart.
And that's it.
Learning to be enough.
When we're willing to look inside and figure out what we need to do to become better versions of ourselves. And it's not always easy. It is not easy. It's very emotional. But when we mature to that point where we can really dig deep, man, what comes out the other side is, I could never imagine where I'm at today. And I'm sure you could echo those sentiments a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. For me, it was 12-step. I went to Celebrate Recovery out in Brighton. It's actually the third biggest Christ-centered 12-step program in the country. My good friend Tim Wessel ran that for many years and built it. And my drug of choice was women. Women and porn. And a lot of guys don't want to talk about it. That's why I talk about it very openly. It's almost better to say you have a heroin addiction to say you have a porn addiction.
Right.
There's like this social shame attached in a lot of circles. And so I think it's cool that there's a Christian group where you can talk openly about that, and it's not a shame thing. It's not a scarlet letter. And so I really learned how to have victory in that area of my life. And a lot of people, it's interesting. Christian Asoy, we both know, he came out of his addiction. You can be on top of the world and still be miserable inside. Brian had Welch, similar story, the basis for Korn.
Yeah.
The guitarist, he and Phil both became Christians, and they both came out of addiction to heroin for those guys, heroin and alcohol.
Yep. There's something to be said for 12-step programs. Some of my best friends, myself included, those were life-changing for myself and for some of my closest friends. You are on that short list. It just caused you to look a little deeper inside. But what I'd like to sort of dovetail into is, obviously your life has taken you up and down, up and down. At what point did you decide to write your first book? Because for me, I was speaking to middle schools and high schools. I decided I needed to write something that they could take away. So my first book was geared towards 12 to 16-year-olds. It was to donate to libraries, to give to kids, to inspire them to have some goals, some dreams. Don't give up on that stuff. What inspired you to write your first book?
It was a couple things. I went into full-time business at 30 years old. And in 2006, my wife's from the Philippines. I lived there as a kid when I was 10. So the summer I turned 8, I was living in Alaska that summer. The summer I turned 10, we're living in the Philippines.
I can't wait to read the memoir.
So I go from the north to the equator, right? And I hated being on welfare. My mom was in nursing school. And then we went there as medical missionaries to the Philippines. It was a very politically unstable country. It was a miracle just that we were allowed to go. A single lady with 2 kids going to a politically unstable country.
Right.
Where there's violence and fighting between the government, military, and the population. And we were able to go. And that experience was just life-changing for me. So I forgot I said it, but when we came back, and just by the way, if you're poor in America, in the last 2 years, a lot of people have dealt with a lot of stress, greater stress than they've ever dealt with in their life. Perspective is so helpful because I hated being poor, and I realized being poor in America is loaded. No matter what challenges you're going through, someone always has it worse than you. I played with friends whose parents had sold them to the human trafficking rings because they were starving to death. Imagine you have 5 kids and you and your wife decide, we're all going to starve if we don't get some food. Let's sell one of the kids so that the rest of us can survive for a year. This is the level of poverty that I lived in, my neighbors had. And so I had the gift of perspective and gratitude, and most of my neighbors making $1 a day, they were very happy, joyful people. Happier than most Americans I had met. So I fell in love with Filipino culture. Fast forward to moving here to Detroit. I met 400 Filipino nurses doing x-rays in nursing homes. Met my wife at one of those nursing homes.
Oh, cool.
And on my wedding day, my mom told me, when we came back, she said, when you were 10 years old, when we came back from the Philippines, you told me you'd marry a Filipino one day. So I go into business. We go on a trade mission to the Philippines. I've been to the Philippines 10 times since I got married. And my one friend, Joel, who actually was an author, and had brought 20 books with him and was giving them to billionaires and some of the most influential people we're meeting in the Philippines. We're all doing business between American companies and Filipino companies. For those of you who don't know, that's what a trade mission is. And the way people would react just to him giving them a gift, you've probably experienced this too, giving books to people. They cost you $3 to $10 to produce a book, but it can make a big impact on someone. So I was like, man, I love encouraging people. I love teaching people stuff. That's one thing. That's one of your two of your great qualities I want to acknowledge, Garold. And so, and forgive me, Gerald or Garold? I want to.
Garold.
It is with a hard G. Thank you. I'm like, man, I hope that's. Sometimes you say G. People call you G for short.
Most people all call me G.
Yeah. So Garold, that's one of the strengths you have. I just want to acknowledge you for that. So I'm like, man, writing a book would be a perfect way to do that. You can encourage somebody and give them information that can improve their life. So to me, and I've taken a spiritual gifts test and personality test, and they all show I'm a great teacher and encourager. So to me, it was just a natural thing of how can I encourage the most people at scale, thinking like a business person, write a book, and then learn how to market it, and you can have a great impact. So that's how my first book came along. It came over from that trip, and within 4 months, I wrote my book.
Really?
Yeah. Because I got mentoring from a lot of high-end marketing people, like Dan Kennedy. He's one of the best marketing consultants in the world. And he basically will teach you how to write a book, how to publish it, and then, how to market it, most importantly. It's the best book in the world. If you don't know how to market it, it won't make the impact.
Yes, and we live in such an amazing time where no matter what you want to accomplish in your life, my favorite quote on that is, it's never a lack of resources, it's always a lack of resourcefulness. And I think that's a great quote because of the internet and technology and how much you can learn if you're looking for the right things.
Oh, totally. My friend Melvin grew up like dirt poor in South Africa. He's East Indian ancestrally. His grandpa was like friends with Gandhi. A lot of people don't know this. Gandhi's from South Africa. A lot of Indians got shipped down to South Africa back in the turn of the century, the early 1900s. So he literally, some missionary came and talked to their village. And there's this was major segregation in South Africa back then when he was a kid. And he was like, if you ever need anything, you just ask Jesus and he'll provide it. Sometimes they would have no food. And she would be like, Jesus, please give us food. We need food. And someone would show up and there'd be groceries on their doors. Mm-hmm. It was just so he would see airplanes flying. And his name's Melvin Pillay. Shout out to Melvin. He'd be he'd see planes. He'd be like, one day I want to fly in you. And once I start flying, I'm never going to stop. And now he travels the world. He's got a Rolls Royce. I mean, it was his resourcefulness and his intention that led to the doors opening for him to fulfill his dreams of his life. That's available to all of us. First you believe it in your mind, and then it starts to manifest in actions, and those actions produce their desired results.
Yep, and no matter who, I think when you start looking at the most successful people, the Jack Canfields of the world, the David R. Newbys of the world, they say the same thing. They say, when you start to believe it, doors start opening up. Things start happening to really guide you, but our ego gets in the way so much that, we have an idea of where we want to go, and the doors keep opening right there, but we're like, no, but I want to go this way, and that's the way you should be going, because the unintended results that you can't envision, that often gets in the way.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's been a big part of my journey of a lot of doors opening recently for me, is just really committing to next level humility. Because a lot of people ask, how do you achieve really high results? You need mentorship and guidance. That's like this book on billions. It's about Solomon's wisdom. He's the ultimate mentor. He was, in today's money, worth $4 trillion. There's all this talk about billionaires shouldn't exist. I mean, he was worth the combined net worth of half of the world's billionaires as a single person. Just to give you an idea of the scale of that wealth. The U.S. GDP is like $6 trillion a year for the whole nation, and he was worth $4 trillion. So he has a book, Proverbs and Ecclesiastes, 2 books he wrote. That's all about how to have a successful life. So it's really the best recorded wisdom for success ever written down. And so modeling that mentorship and then seeking mentors. In the last 2 months, I've had 6 people just give me very hard corrections right to my face. I think the reason why is I gladly receive and desire input, even input that's hard to receive. Counsel that's hard to receive, because I want to grow. And I think some people ask, how do I find great mentors? Be humble and be intentional. If you can be intentional about have a great marketing plan and seek out mentors, that's how I talked to my first 3 billionaires. But then how you're being as a person determines how much input they'll give you. If your cup is full, there's no room for someone to pour into you. You need to be able to empty yourself of what you think is right or what is the truth in order to receive new revelation, new information.
It just reminds me of a great Taoist, I don't even know what lesson, where the master guy comes, he knows everything about everything, and the master's sitting there pouring tea, and he just won't stop. And the guy's just running his mouth, and he just keeps it going, and it starts running all over the table. I was like, what are you doing? And he basically said what you just said. Well, this cup represents, you're already full. and this is what you can't. Yeah, it's probably, if you look it up, it's a lot, 2 sentences that say that, but it just reminds me of that if you already believe you are full, you're not going to accept any more. And I'm a constant amateur at everything I do. I don't care if it says professional skateboarder, always willing to learn more and learn a better way from A to B, whatever that is. If it's working on my house, if it's marketing, whatever, you always have to be open to learning, I believe.
Yeah, definitely. For me, having such foolish male role models, and then my mom told me later on when I was an adult that my grandfather choked my grandmother to death in front of her when she was 8 years old. And my great-grandfather tried to kill my great-grandmother. So this was 3 generations of murderers that came before me. And I'm like, Mom, there was an incident that I won't. I actually shared that incident at the Harvard Club of Boston for the first time ever publicly. Like, I almost killed my son when he was 9 months old. Not intentionally, not in anger, just sort of like he wouldn't stop crying. It's the only night my birth father ever slept at my house, and my son wouldn't stop crying. And my wife's working midnights at the hospital, and I'm like, I was like feeling embarrassed. Like after 20 minutes, like when the kid's crying, what do? You feed them, you burp them. If they're still crying, you check their diaper. They're still crying, you see if they have a temperature. I mean, what do you do after that? So I go through all those things. He's still crying. And then like, I notice I'm like holding against my chest, like, son, stop crying. You're going to wake up grandpa. And I started getting frustrated, then angry, and I'm holding against my chest longer and longer. I'm like, this is how thank God I had a moment of clarity. I'm like, this is how people kill their kids. They get frustrated and then they end up smothering their kids. Right. And so, but it was that fear of embarrassment of like looking like I don't know how to do basic, simple stuff, take care of my kid, being embarrassed to my dad. And so it was after that incident, I called my mom the next day, and she told me about my grandfather, my great-grandfather. And then eventually I was just told her, like, I'm sick of repeating foolish patterns. Like, tell me all the crap grandpa and great-grandpa did and my stepdad did. Like, I'm an adult now, I'm married, I have a kid. Tell me all of it. Because I don't want to live these guys' freaking life. Right. And actually science explains that. Epigenetics is a passing on of patterns, lifestyle patterns through the genetic code. Yeah, and and you can rewire it. So it's not like this is my lot in life, I'm screwed. No, you can rewire it, but it takes intentionality. You'll keep repeating those patterns till you become aware of it, and then you pick a new way and you reinforce that new way.
And that's exactly what I was going to comment. Epigenetics is incredible, and we're not predetermined by our genetics. We can shift them. It takes thoughtful intention, and it might take a little bit of effort as well, but breaking the patterns is such a rad concept that so many are starting to come to grips with. Right. That yes, I get it, but I'm not predetermined to be that. I can break this pattern of whatever it is, if it's addiction, if it's whatever, violence, whatever.
Right. Yeah, I think it's really important to realize there's 4 levels of awareness. There's unconscious incompetence. We're just making dumb decisions, you don't even realize it. And then as you seek wisdom or you experience some painful results of less than optimal decisions, doing cocaine, looking at pornography, for me, whatever it is, it's hurting your family, it's hurting others in your life, right? You got a gambling problem, you can't pay your bills, that hurts your kids and your people you live with. Then the next level is conscious incompetence, where you realize this isn't working. Like, I need to do something better. Then you can choose, as you seek out wisdom on what's a better way, you can choose conscious competence, where you have to really make the effort, like you were just saying, Garold. It's important for people to realize doing hard stuff is worth it because it creates new results. Life is hard either way. Being foolish and experiencing the pain of that is hard, right? Being foolish with money. Choosing new ways of being where it takes a lot of effort on your part, that's hard too. So the question becomes, which hard do you want? I want the hard that produced the good results.
Right.
So eventually you'll get to a stage of unconscious competence where you do things in a great way without even thinking about it because it's become habitual for you. Yes. So wherever you're at on that stage of any part of your life that you're not happy with, just choose to humble yourself, empty yourself of, I know what is right or the best way, seek some wisdom, and then practice that conscious competence.
Speaking of wisdom, you founded the Solomon Wisdom Society, and you brought up King Solomon. Now you bring up wisdom. What is the Solomon Wisdom Society?
So I study billionaires as well as King Solomon. I study modern billionaires. And like a lot of people, Elon Musk is one of my favorite billionaires. The way he rolled out Tesla was he made a $100,000 to $150,000 car, and he only made 2,000 of them. And then he marketed it to billionaires and Hollywood actors. So he's like, let me prove that an electric car can be cool and affordable, right? Relatively. Like it was as fast as $300,000 cars, and it cost 150. So that's relatively affordable. Once he did that, then he rolled out a sedan that was 60 to 100 grand, more mass produced. That car still exists, the Model S. And then eventually came out with the Model 3, which was the $30,000 to $50,000 entry level car. And most people can afford a $30,000 car if you keep it for 7 years.
Right.
And especially with the cost of gas savings. Before it jumped up recently.
Yeah.
Even at $2 a gallon gas, it's way cheaper. So I've modeled Elon's rollout of Tesla with the Solomon Wisdom Society. The Solomon Wisdom Society is basically a private members only by application organization. So we're starting with memberships to 40 to 60 billionaires. We're capping the membership at 2% of the world's global billionaires. So there's about 3,000 billionaires in the world. So that means 60 would be the maximum that can be allowed in. And then eventually in the next couple of years, we're going to roll out like membership levels for people where it's say 100 million up to $1 billion. There's about 25,000 of those in the world. And then we'll do like 10 million to 100 million. And eventually we'll offer membership to anybody, even if they're just a entrepreneur and they still have a 9 to 5 and they haven't figured out how to make income as an entrepreneur yet. But I'm not going to for people who might be like, oh man, that's not cool. I got to wait, right, to be a member. Why are you trying to exclude people? I'm not trying to exclude people. I want to give amazing customer service to people. So I want to start with a small group of people and then eventually, get all of our systems in place and really optimized and then be able to scale it. This is part of the reason why Elon started small with Tesla too. He realized, he called it a manufacturing hell. You start getting a lot of people ordering whatever you're offering, whether it's a product or a service, you need to be able to deliver it to them.
Right.
So it's important to dial in your business systems and then scale it to offer it to a lot of people.
And it's very, such a great lesson because the gentleman who started Tom's Footwear, he only made like 160 pairs or something the first time because he had been, I think, in Africa, and there was 160 kids there, and he wanted to give them shoes. So that's what he did. He's like, I'll sell 160, give 160 away, we'll be done. And his friend advertised it at her store. It hit the New York Times, and they were being handmade in that little village.
Right.
And he ended up calling them, like Nordstrom started calling, and it grew like crazy initially, and he was having trouble filling the orders. So, make sure customer service is paramount right now because there's a million companies that can do the same types of things. It boils down to how you treat your customers and how you are as a employee or owner or whatever it is, how you represent the brand will keep the people coming back.
Yeah, totally. And one key for that is be willing to say no to people because you love them. Here's what I mean. I used to always say yes to everything because I had this rejection identity. I always wanted to make people happy and try to please them. So I was like a over pleaser, and I would often overcommit. And a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with that overcommitting. And just anybody with an emotional wounding of rejection will often overcommit. So it's always good to sort of do like a 3-second rule and a 3-day rule. Like Dave Ramsey says, before you buy something, put it in your shopping cart and wait 3 days and see if you still want it.
Okay.
You won't do a lot of impulse purchases that way. Someone says something mean to you and you're pissed, it's good to do with 3 breaths. Take 3 breaths and you'll actually get from fight or flight in the back of your brain, your adrenaline running. You're more likely to mouth off and say something really hurtful, right, or have it turn into a fight and it'll escalate. If you take 3 breaths, you'll be back in your prefrontal lobe. You can actually respond intentionally instead of react emotionally. So that the 3 breath rule is really good at the short level. In terms of commitment, I think it's good to wait 3 days before, like if someone invites you to do something, say, I really want to do that. That sounds cool. Let me just confirm 3 days from now that yes, I want to do this. And then that just gives you time to think through it and not overcommit emotionally because you just want to say yes and please them.
I like it. And it resonates with me. I had to learn, and I'm still learning because I am a people pleaser. I say yes to most things. I learned I'll give it some thought. is my answer a lot of times. And 90% of the people don't ask me for whatever it was, if they wanted artwork or wanted this or that or the other thing, because I do. I say yes, and I overcommit, and then I get frustrated, and then I have to do it because I've already said I was going to do it. So I like the 3 breaths for sure, and the 3 days. That's a great. Make sure you're writing this down, y'all, because this is very important life information that's going to save you a lot of gray hair, maybe some sleepless nights by not overcommitting to things, not saying yes all the time. And many of us, myself included, are guilty of that. You know, being a people pleaser and trying to make everybody happy all the time, but saying no often is more beneficial than actually saying yes, which is what you opened with.
And instead of saying no right away, it's nice to say, I like this idea. Honor them. Say thank you for that request, or thank you for that question, or thank you for that invitation, whatever it is. And say, let me just get back to you and confirm within 3 days. So this way you're honoring them. It doesn't feel like rejection to them, but you're still being wise with your time and honoring of what are you committed to. The clearer you can get about what you're committed to and creating in life, it gives you a decision-making matrix about what to say yes to and what to say no to.
Right on.
And if I say no, I always refer them to another resource to help them.
I like that a lot too. So they're not feeling rejected and not, giving you the finger as they're walking away. They're saying, oh, you can't do it, but you did point me in the right direction so I can get whatever it is I need to get done. And I really like that. I'm taking mental notes right now. Hopefully you guys are taking notebook notes, because that's again, I'll say it, that's the goal of this show. That is the goal of this show. We're getting nuggets of wisdom from one of the most amazing humans on the planet, in my humble opinion. And you can't get this anywhere else but the Drop-In. So thank you again, David, for being here. Thank you guys for tuning in. And as I was laying out our outline, there's a million questions I want to ask, but we can talk about them at dinner. For the driven entrepreneur, it's difficult to balance family and business. We hear about it all the time that, all my dad did was work 100 hours a week. I never saw him, and he's building this empire. What advice do you have for balancing that family business dynamic?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Garold. That was my experience growing up. My stepdad always had 2 full-time jobs and usually a part-time one. I mean, we saw him for 3 hours Sunday morning. And I remember for a year when I was 5, I really liked this one part-time job he had because he delivered papers on Saturday morning, and we would go with him. And so he had a pickup truck. My brother and I got to sit in the back. This is Texas in 1979. So we're just sitting in the back of the pickup truck he's like, that house. We throw the newspaper in the yard. At the end of it, we delivered papers to this apartment complex, and we would strip down to our underwear, and we could cut through the fence and go swim in their swimming pool in our underwear. Then we'd come home and we would watch cartoons for an hour and eat Lucky Charms. So that was a great Saturday morning because it was work for him, and we still got to spend time with him. We would hang off the back of the pickup truck. This was my extreme thing to do, going 50 miles an hour, hang off the back, looking at the cement below. It's crazy stuff. So
yeah.
There was an episode of Beavis and Butthead where they did that. They're all hanging off the back of a pickup truck. So for the balance thing, it's important to know as a provider, whether you're a dad or a mom, that what's driving me. For me, it's what do I want for my kids? I found that I was being a workaholic early, the first 4 years of being a business person. And then I realized if I didn't schedule family time, I could have worked till 9 p.m. So I started doing is I started scheduling. Instead of beating myself up and judging myself, I'm I keep my appointments. I follow a calendar. So I started scheduling every day, 7 to 9, family time. Dinner, talk with my wife, play with my kids. And the first month I did that, girl, I actually felt guilty. That's man, I should love my family enough to just do it. But it's I'm wired to follow schedules, so I just did it. That works with the way I'm wired. I put that appointment there. I kept that appointment. If you find that it's hard to keep the appointment with your family, then this is the thing that worked for me. Think of your favorite billionaire or your favorite celebrity. You love Justin Bieber. You love whoever. You love
How
Elon
did you
Musk.
know? How did you know I loved you?
I'm a believer too, girl. We're closet believers. If you had an appointment to go have lunch tomorrow with Justin Bieber and he was your favorite celebrity, would you let something else get in the way of that, or would you keep that appointment?
Right.
You're going to keep that appointment because it's important to you, and you realize you value Justin Bieber's time. We should treat our families the same way. It's very easy to let other things encroach on our family time. So I say I treat my time with God every morning and my time with my family just like I have an appointment with Elon Musk. Give it the level of importance it needs, when you will keep the appointment. And then when you're there, the other thing for entrepreneurs, oftentimes they're thinking about work while they're with their family. Like, how do you turn your entrepreneurial brain off? So one hack that's really good, I learned this from a guy, Alex Sharfin. Shout out to Alex Sharfin. It's this thing called the waterfall. He's like, at the top of your entrepreneur brain turn off. He's like, at the end of the day, plan your next day. There's a lot of other steps to it, but he's like, at the end of the day, you plan your next day and you just write down 3 things you're thankful for. So it sort of gives your mind like completion that you've already planned the next day, and you like sort of sealed your work day with gratitude. Mm-hmm. And so that really helps you turn off your brain, like when you stop working and go spend time with your family. But yeah, I've met guys that are worth hundreds of millions or billions of dollars, and they've been divorced multiple times.
Right.
Because they've never got coaching and received wisdom, wise mentorship on how to apply business best practices to how they do things with their family. I think we should all do that. A lot of people invest thousands or tens of thousands or millions of dollars in learning how to be great at business. It's like, our family is I see your family as your most important division of your business. So you need to invest in it the same way you apply business wisdom to your business, to your work. If you did a 9-to-5 right now, you should still apply wisdom to how you do your work. So seek wisdom and apply that to your family. And the last thing is, a lot of guys, I think I would guess between, just from talking to 117 billionaires, I think people from all the way from starting out in business to multi-billionaires, about 35% of them have some kind of rejection or lack of affirmation thing in their heart. And oftentimes they're looking to get affirmation from the world by success. Perfect case in point. Donald Trump is the most obvious example of that, because if you look at the Forbes billionaire issues, the 2 years before he became president, he would sit there and invite them to his office every year and talk about, hey, look, you guys have me worth $5 billion. You're actually wrong. I'm worth 7.5. Let me show you how. Because he got his affirmation from how high he was on the Forbes list.
Right, right.
And that's just sort of a very public known, you can read the article in Forbes, example of that. But a lot of us, I remember, like, I wanted to hit this certain income level because I'm like, man, I realized when I started doing recovery work and doing my inventory and making amends, like, man, I took all these risks in business because I wanted my dad and my stepdad's like affirmation that I never got. Mm-hmm. So wanting affirmation is oftentimes a thing that drives us and can cause us to not affirm our own family and like repeat the pattern of neglecting our family the way our dads or mothers may have neglected us.
Right.
So it's really important to like break that generational cycle and seek affirmation in healthier ways. And for me, I talked about it in the book, like I learned over a multi-year process doing recovery work, just like choose gratitude, choose, hey, I'm one of God's creations. We all are. I have value just for who I am. I don't need to achieve any financial X or, do this amazing skateboard thing. My friend invited me to go skateboard with Christian Soy and Tony Hawk last summer, and I'm like, it freaked me out. And I'm like, man, I got to get better. But it's like, I'm never going to be a great skater. I just enjoy it. It's fun.
Yes.
So I'm like, I don't need to get good before I go skating with them and accept that invitation.
And they would have been so stoked to have you there because, they get to skate with the greatest on the planet. So to see, in my opinion, to skate with somebody who just loves what they're doing, that vibration is often enough to really make an impact.
Yeah, the vibration of joy and just enjoy hanging out and being with the guys is fun.
Yeah, and both of those guys.
Or with the girls.
Yeah.
I meet girls like wearing the little 70s kind of roller skates. Sort of the roller girls, like down at the skate park downtown.
They are crazy.
That's so cool.
They are crazy. I can't even imagine having wheels attached to both of my, like now I'm going to be able to skate on my board when I'm doing a trick. I can throw it away, slide out on my knees. They can't throw those things away.
And they're heavy and they're on you, I know.
Oh my word, that is so punk rock.
And then they fly up the quarter pipe and stuff.
They are insane. They are insane and fun to watch in all ages. I see them around, at different parks. Everybody from 17 to that shit in their 50s getting out there on their roller skates, and I think it's awesome.
So, Garold, I have this fantasy. This is part of what drives me to take care of my health, of still being able to play basketball when I'm 90.
Yeah.
So I'd like to still be able to see skating when I'm 90.
For me, it was I wanted to be able
take care of the core.
Yep.
Stay flexible.
Yeah. For me, it was first thing like that I ever thought of is I wanted to be able to do inverts in big bowls at 40. And on my 40th birthday, I went out. I did a hand plant in an invert in the Riley Bowl, 10.5 foot deep, big vert, gnarly, did it. Well, I'm going to be 50 this year.
That's one on far. Is that the one on 515 holes?
Yes.
Yes.
And I'm going to be 50 this year, and I've been skating a 13-foot ramp, and I know I'm going to be doing inverts at 50, and we got to set those little goals.
That's awesome.
Those kinds of goals, if it's skating at 90, if it's shooting baskets at 90, if it's something at 30, if it's at 50, if it's at 16, whatever. Those goals are so important, and they really do something internally that I don't think you could really explain unless you experience it.
It's like the power of intention.
Yeah. Yeah. The power of intention is incredible. I can't. They're sort of beginning to measure it a little bit, the magnetism of the brain and the heart, and
quantum physics. It's very exciting.
Yeah,
what they're able to measure now.
Yeah, it's getting really cool because so many people in the Western world need things quantified.
Right.
Faith is not a strong suit for Western thinking people, and so when they start quantifying that kind of those kinds of things, I think it's going to change a little bit of the paradigm of how people think about that.
Yeah, I'm excited because growing up, I grew up a Christian background, but in high school I was an agnostic. I was mad at the world. I was very rebellious. Mad about lack of affirmation and just horrible men in my life and the lack of a good male role model. And I was stealing my mom's car and being crazy and doing Fast and the Furious. Revving her car to the speed limiter. She had a Nissan 240 SX. I would drive at 125 miles an hour. That car would go 150, but they put a limiter at 125.
Right.
So thank God I couldn't go 150 down the freeway in Georgia. I never had an accident, but in that anger and talking about energy, I studied every other world religion. So I'm like, it felt like the religion lottery. Like, how do you know you got the winning lottery ticket? One question I'd ask people moving a lot is, what do you believe, and then why do you believe it? And most people would say 98%, well, that's what my family believes. Right. They never thought, if there really is a God, if there really is eternity, if there's anything after us dying in our physical body, shouldn't you apply a little bit more intentionality into studying that and choosing purposefully why you believe and looking at the evidence? So I studied all the major world religions. And one thing that's been neat, I even went to seminary. I became a Christian at 16, actually because I could not stop stealing my mom's car. It had become a chemical addiction. That adrenaline rush was great. Stealing the cars, looking out for the cops, right? Doing illegal NASCAR moves, cutting in between cars two inches away from them. It was fun. So I was just tired of the addiction, Garold. I felt like this sucks. I can't stop doing this. It became a compulsive behavior. So I was just ready to kill myself.
And spirituality helped get you out of that.
Well, yeah. So I became a Christian very pessimistically. The day before I was going to kill myself, I had planned it out. I was going to walk into the woods a mile from my house, and I had studied anatomy. My mom's in nursing school, and I had met her professor who was a neurosurgeon, and I had studied how to make incisions in the brain and do different brain surgeries. I was planning to be a neurosurgeon. So even though I hadn't been to x-ray school yet, I was going to, not just be too graphic here, forgive me, trigger warning. I've talked about a lot of crazy stuff already. Maybe we should put a trigger warning in the beginning of the episode. Hey, we're talking about really heavy stuff here. Right. But I was going to put the butcher knife between my 6th and 7th ribs and just bleed out in the woods. I thought that's what I deserved for what a horrible son I was and how disrespectful I had been to my mom, and how I was just such a worthless, wimpy guy that I couldn't even freaking stop stealing cars. My mom pressed charges on me, by the way. She realized I was almost 17 and I would have gone to prison for that as an adult. In Georgia, you're an adult at 17.
And GTA is no joke.
Yeah, you might look fun in the game, but in real life, not cool. Yeah. So, and I'd already been arrested once by a state trooper, stealing her car, her slower car, not the fast one. But I got arrested in her sports car, and here's the neat thing, girl. For me, talking about energy and the heart and what drives you as a person, right? I was very pessimistic when I, prayed what they call the sinner's prayer in Christianity, right? But after a week, I realized I hadn't thought of stealing anything for a week. If I was a 16-year-old today, I'd be looking at the latest iPhone and thinking, using my entrepreneurial creativity, what are all the different ways I can steal that iPhone, right? For me, I applied it to cars back in 1990. But when I became a Christian, I realized like Jesus became very real for me personally at that moment because it solved a practical problem of mine, like this addiction I just couldn't get over. It was a chemical addiction. And so I think it's important. I studied a lot now, a lot more of the physical and emotional aspects of recovery and belief, and how do you create maximum achievement. Mm-hmm. And it's you're right. In the West, we do not pay enough attention to clearing emotional and physical sort of residual crap in our body, energy stuff from trauma. or just from lack of, it doesn't have to be crazy trauma like I experienced. It could just be, lack of affirmation. If you're wired to, like, if there's a book, 5 love languages, if your number one love language is words of affirmation, and your parents don't affirm you, and then they freaking are actively abusive to you, that does a major job on your heart.
Right. In those first 7 years, we're just sponges. That's all we are. We're not even making decisions yet.
Knowing how to heal that energy is important.
Yeah.
And some people will live their whole life and never figure that out. So to me, it's exciting. The whole, they're actually studying quantum physics. Like, the heart has memory cells that are 10,000 times stronger. They've measured it than the memory cells of the brain. So this is why one of Solomon's teachings is, protect, above all else, guard your heart, for it's the wellspring of life. Meaning, be really, really wise what you give your affection to. I was being foolish. I was killing my marriage, giving my affection to freaking pornography, and justifying it and saying, well, I'm not sleeping with all these women, so I'm not committing an affair on her. But I was hurting our energetic, emotional bond as husband and wife. Mm-hmm. So I think it's really important that as men, we're real honest about, let's look at the energy of what we're creating and what we're doing. And if that's not creating the result we want, let's be intentional and get healing for ourselves, because you can't give your kids or your wife or your partner, if you're a woman, your husband, your partner, what you don't have. Right. So you need to do that healing work first. And it's really exciting that we're learning more and more modalities in the West of how to do that.
Well, and it is. I study a guy named Dr. Joe Dispenza, mm-hmm. and he really is deep into that, epigenetics and measuring the magnetism. And, mm-hmm. and I think he's at the forefront when it comes to actually science and the medical community, really taking the power of thought seriously. What are the way we feel and how it affects our heart, how it affects healing, the internal system, and the blockages from past traumas.
Sometimes there's this guy who wrote a book called, he passed away, his name was Henry Wright, wrote a book called Be in Health, A More Excellent Way. He had a PhD in medicine and a PhD in theology. He actually did all this deep study about each disease and which thing it was tied to energetically. Like, unforgiveness would usually manifest as cancer, and rejection would manifest as this. And like me, I've had a lot of tightness in my lower back. I've hurt my back 6 times where I couldn't walk. Mm-hmm. And I realized that it was just a lot of the trauma I had for the first 7 years of my life was stored in my lower lumbar spine, and it showed up as inflammation, and then it would flare up and I couldn't walk. So I only took 5 Vicodins in my whole life, but I can see how NFL guys got addicted to those things. They're crazy. I went from not being able to walk to feeling normal. Right. I'm like, holy crap, you were a pro athlete. Like, those things are so dangerous. And I just learned, my dad said 6 back surgeries. So I decided at 18, 3 things. I'm not going to get any back surgeries. I'm going to figure out how to take care of my back. I'm going to stay married to whoever I marry, because my mom was married to 5 times and my stepdad was married 10 times when I was growing up. So it's not like find the right spouse, it's be the right spouse. I figured that out at 17. Thank God I had enough clarity to see that. And then the third thing was, I'm going to give my kids a stability I never had. Like, they're going to grow up with the same friends, the same house. We'll travel a lot and have fun, but they're not going to be on the move and on the run like I was. And thank God I've been able to fulfill all of those commitments. But the one about, just upgrading who I'm being as a man, I didn't realize how much release work I had to do to release that stuff from my body. And it is really exciting to realize, like, we should deal with all 3. We should, therapy is great, do it emotional. 12-step is great, doing an inventory and amends, just like forgiving everything is amazing. Because I don't want to die of some disease because of some emotional thing I'm carrying. And I realize there's a total emotional thing connected to my lower back pain.
Oh, I am so in agreement with everything you just said. Holding on to resentments will kill you. For me, when I get super emotional, I've had hip issues. I've been public about it, stem cells. Mm-hmm. When I get really emotional or I have pent up anger or something, my hips are killing me. And the next day I get up and I can't walk. And I'm like, I need to deal with something emotionally right now.
Sounds like an alarm. We should pay attention.
Yes,
an alarm going off. Pay attention.
Took me a while to understand that, but now I do. I know when my hips are feeling even worse than normal, there's something that I need to deal with or need to handle that's causing some...
What modalities do you use to release it? Because I keep always adding stuff to my modalities, so I'm curious, what do you use to release it?
Well, for me, I always go, because I'm a yoga guy and I meditate, a few times a day, and I ask the divine to, give me the words, almost the opening prayer you started the show with. That's my opening morning prayer every single day. Show me the way, give me the words, give me that divine guidance that I really need. And usually I get guided into the right places. As soon as I acknowledge that that's what's doing it, and I have that acknowledgement, and I ask for help. And for me,
You start to feel it. You start to feel it in your body.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Physically.
Yeah. If I get pissed off, like I'll just like, I used to in my 20s, like just drop to the floor and do push-ups.
Yeah.
I was tired. That's one way to get that adrenaline out of your system. Another thing is like, I just like choose gratitude and thank God for the awareness. And then I'm like, I send away negative energy. I send away any negative emotion. I choose gratitude. I choose thankfulness. I choose joy. I choose peace. And
What is
you'll feel it physically within a couple of minutes. And then the deep breathing. If you're still feeling that adrenaline in your system, the deep breathing can get rid of it. You can do that or something physical to get it out of your system.
Well, in gratitude, I'll tell you what, multiple times throughout the day, I'll look up and just say thank you for at night it's about the pillow and the sheets and the little things, in the morning it's laying out the plan for the day, but gratitude that I have another opportunity for this day. Gratitude is one of the most, I think, underrated and amazing feelings. I don't even know if I want to call it an emotion, because it's a feeling of gratitude, of thankfulness, and it immediately puts a smile on your face. At least it does for me. As soon as I start thinking of those things, it's a complete 180. If I'm in a good mood, it takes me to a better mood. If I'm not having the best day in the world, it helps me get out of that little funk, whatever it might be. Gratitude is amazing.
And another thing cool is like love is a choice, and so is gratitude. You can choose peace, you can choose love, you can choose joy in any situation. Oftentimes a circumstance will cause us to feel a certain emotion, but in that moment we realize, okay, an outside force made me feel a certain way, but at that moment you can choose to release it and to be joyful, to be thankful, to be at peace. That's the power, is to realize like we can choose it even when we don't feel it. And that literally will change our physical feelings when we choose to like go to that frequency.
Right.
Joy and anger and joy and frustration, joy and complaining really can't coexist.
Right. And I think
it's thanking God for all these blessings, the complaints will go away, because it's like your cup was full of complaints. You fill your cup with joy, the complaints are gone.
Yep. And I think it was Francis of Assisi said, I can choose peace over this. And I love that quote as well, because when you get all, if it's bummed out, if it's pissed off, whatever it is, if you can say, I can choose peace over this, you're making that choice. It is a decision of how you want to handle the circumstances in your life. And we can make a shift like that by thinking a different thought. And, you brought up the 3 breaths and the different things in recovery. One of the greatest tools I was ever, and it was a therapist that told me, she said, make a list of 10 things you love. And for me, it's like hot shower, chicken noodle soup, going for a walk. And she said, when you feel like, for me, again, it was vodka was my thing. And she said, when you feel like you have to have a drink, start at the top of that list, because that urge only lasts about 6 minutes or so. And I never even got to number 5 on the list. I jump in a hot shower, and by the time I got out of the shower, if I even still had a little inkling, hot bowl of soup, and it never much got past that. So those 3 breaths, I bet you there's science, quantifiable science behind that. Giving yourself a break for a minute to step away, whatever it is, if it's breathing, if it's your favorite things, if it's counting to 10, whatever it is, giving yourself a moment to step away, and it's really a game changer.
Yeah, it is.
For sure. I wanted to ask you about something I read, because I really didn't understand what is, financial success failure? Because, you're a legacy coach. You teach legacy, long-term wealth and generational wealth. What is, I didn't grasp the concept of financial success failure. What is that?
So a lot of things in life are counterintuitive. So a lot of times I used to think, well, if I can make $1 million a year, then I'll be successful. Right? Then my wife will be happy. My sons will be happy. I can provide this amazing lifestyle. Right? And then, then later, like I remember the first time I got a $20,000 profit check on a real estate deal. Again, I grew up on welfare, right? So my stepdad, even when we had $1,000 in his pocket, he would fly prostitutes to the Bahamas. He gave my mom $400 a month to pay the bill. So like we would always just get by. So I had a very big poverty consciousness. But what's sort of crazy was, I got a $25,000, $50,000 check from real estate deals. The first time I got one of those checks, Garold, my first thought was, I want to go to the strip club. I was like, what the hell? Why wasn't my first thought, let's go to Kalahari or Cedar Point for the weekend as a family.
Right.
It was that I became more aware. Holy crap! This is still in my systems in some way, right? These patterns of my stepdad. I haven't released all of these yet, and so financial success failure is it's a weird paradoxical thing that the more financial success people create, oftentimes the more likely their family is to fail. Here's why. We talked about earlier about the overworking and neglecting and not affirming and empowering and intentionally passing on your skills to your kids and your wife, right? A lot of times people, like, their plate gets overfull and they end up not going to the kids' soccer games, not breaking time engagements with the family. A lot of times the family suffers. So that's the emotional component. The other component is the lack of passing on skills. The third component is outside pressure. Imagine you're one of Elon Musk's kids or you're Tony Hawk's kids. They're like, oh man, you want to be a skater? Like, living up to your parents' example. A lot of wealthy people's kids are like, why even frickin' try? I can't be as cool as my mom. Imagine Sarah Blakely's your mom, right? For a female. My mom's a billionaire and she did all this innovative stuff with Spanx. I'm not wired for a business. How am I going to compete with mom or make a name for myself? How can I live up to and make mom happy or make her proud? And so it's really important to realize your kids, the more successful you become, are more likely to fail because why try to be like mom or dad? I don't think I can be successful as them. A lot of those kids just console themselves with addiction.
I was going to say they go completely the other way.
A friend of mine, Lee Hausner, she wrote a book and she talks about this concept called, she used to be the head psychologist for the Beverly Hills, California school system. She calls it the golden ghetto because a lot of really poor kids in the ghetto, they have very high promiscuousness, drug addiction, just bad decisions. There's the same number of kids who have those problems in very wealthy neighborhoods because of those three factors I just brought up. So for the parents to realize, it's important that we don't deceive ourselves and say, when I become more successful and give my kids the best of everything, then they will be successful. No, they won't. You need to give them your time and your affirmation. As parents, that's something that only we can do. We are the biggest influence in our kids' lives. So it's vital that we affirm our kids and speak their love language to them very intentionally. If we don't, our kids are going to fail, and no level of financial success will solve that. This is the biggest thing missing with estate planning and succession planning. It's all about don't lose all your money to taxes and preserve the business and pass on the business, but nowhere near enough time is put into affirming, creating a culture of affirmation for your kids and passing on your skills. If you pass on your skills and you don't affirm them, they're still likely going to blow it.
I think I was pretty fortunate because my mom gave me my empathy and my dad gave me my athleticism and drive. So I got a pretty cool combination, even though it wasn't the greatest, I loved growing up, and I grew up sort of similar, government subsidized housing, not making $1 million, and paper out at 11. I worked from that time on and just, I was fortunate to have some incredible male influences in my life at certain times. If it was a boss at a job, if it was, depending on what it was. And hopefully for our viewers, we're giving you some positive influence on your life. And maybe it's lacking for you every day, but tune into the drop-in and you can get some little nuggets, sometimes often big nuggets of information that can be life-changing for you and for me. Like I said, I'm making mental notes because I learn something every show, and we're blessed to have you in studio today, David, because already I'm like, I got to be writing all this stuff down because
I always have a yellow pad on me and I'm always taking notes on every consult I do.
Yeah, why not?
It reinforces it in your brain.
Yeah, when you write it, it crystallizes it and it does something special. That's why I encourage people to write down their goals or write down, even when they're angry, sit and write it down because somehow that gets out of you. Speaking of stuff like that, do you have any tips that you can give the up-and-comer who is listening right now? They're watching this show, and always my goal is somebody out there in the universe is watching, and they're going, man, I want to be like David Newby. Do you have any tips for that up-and-comer in high school right now who's saying, I want to be more like that guy? Just a couple. I know they got to read the book. They got to read the best-selling book or pick up the first book or whatever. Any quick tips you can give anybody? Even though you've given a boatload already.
I would say there's like a few main things. One is always be curious, and like we talked about, daily empty yourself so that you can receive more wisdom. I would say seek out mentors. Even if you like grew up like me and you moved a lot, and it took me a long time to really develop some quality relationships with older men, where I wasn't looking for affirmation for them, where I was at peace with who I am, is just, because of who I am. Right. For me, it was, reading the Bible and just being content that, hey, God loves me and my mom and my brother love me, and that's enough. I don't need any particular man like my birth father or my stepfather's affirmation. So like seeking mentorship, it's important to empty yourself, seek wisdom. And I would say lastly, be patient with the process. In my 20s, I did a bunch of stuff in business, and it was like impatience. There's a phrase that Solomon teaches in Proverbs: don't be hasty and miss the way. Be diligent and follow through on things. Sometimes you can just hastily jump into something and go do it without getting the information that you need to be successful. So some people are always jumping from opportunity to opportunity. Like some people are, and I love MLM, by the way. It's a great way to like learn mentorship, because they usually tell you, they encourage you and have you read personal development books. Right. And then they sharpen each other and you get mentorship from your upline if you have a good upline. But some people, they'll jump from an MLM, then they're doing crypto mining, then they're doing real estate investing, they're doing this other thing. It's almost like whatever is hot, they go do that. Don't opportunity jump. Be patient. And my one friend, Marshall Silver, he's the world's best hypnotist. He says, sample the buffet, meaning test different things out and see what's a fit for you. Because some businesses are a way better fit, or some industries or some careers are way better fits for some people than others, based on your personality. So I think it's good also to take a couple personality tests. And a lot of them are free online. There's a one test you can get for free on Tony Robbins' website. I forget the name of it because I've taken like 10 of them and I forget the names sometimes. But you can take one of the personality tests about how you do things in the workplace for free on Tony Robbins' website. And then also, if you're a spiritual person, like there are free spiritual gifts tests you can take online. You can also take that 5 love languages test quiz online. It'll tell you what your top love languages are. I say have every one of your kids and your spouse, if you're married, your girlfriend, even if you're dating your boyfriend, and then intentionally speak their love language to them. That's a huge game changer. And all these quizzes are free online. So take the time to figure out how you're wired and how the people close to you are wired. And then it's intentionally, look to do things that are best suited to you. And by the way, I'm 47. I'll be 48 this summer. And I would say it was 40 to 43 when I got really clear, like what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. I'm going to do legacy coaching, talk about affirmation, being the best male. I'm a guy, so I focus on coaching men, right? No offense to the ladies. But all these teachings of like intentionally, I talked about in the book, decide who you're going to be as a man and release definitions of manhood you had from your male role models that are not optimal. And then like replace those beliefs, those suboptimal beliefs with really better intentional beliefs. I like redefine manhood for myself, and then I've transformed my relationship with my sons and my wife doing that. So I would say be intentional and be patient with the process. Because literally from 22 till 42 for 20 years, I was doing different stuff. I did real estate for full time for 10 years, real estate investing. But I had an inkling of, actually, when I was on my trade mission in the Philippines, the same one that I decided to write my first book with my friend, I had the idea to create the Solomon Wisdom Society. But it took 10 years of me healing my heart before I was ready to actually go do that myself and realize that I have everything I need to influence 60 of the world's billionaires. Yeah. So be patient with the process, right? I got impatient. I thought about quitting and not even, pursuing that multiple times. But I had some friends who had built, $150 million companies say, like, look, there is something here. I've talked to a lot of billionaires too, and like they need this. So because I had good mentors and advisors, they helped me push through the times where I had, big doubts.
Right. And we all do. There are days in my life where I'm like, God, why do I do this? I should just quit doing it all and go get a 40-hour week job. And I'm like, no, I can't do that. I've been always, I stay busy all day, every day. And if it's working on my health, if it's working on my sanity, or if it's working on something else I have going, I'm a busy person, but I always have those doubts. Not always. They get further and further apart. I think the further along you get focused on what your goals are and what your passion is, those doubts get further and further in the rearview mirror. And surrounding yourself with like-minded individuals is, I think, a huge thing. Mentors, different things like that. But can you believe it? We've already filled up a whole hour already, so we're gonna have to do this again.
It felt like 10 minutes.
Yeah,
That's
totally.
Cool.
So we're
Can I share one last thing, girl?
Heck yeah, you can.
You were talking about daily, starting the day and just thanking God for another day. A friend of mine passed away in January. He turned 48 in December, and a month later he died. He was in really great shape. And I just want to give a shout out to him. His name's Aris de la Cruz. So the person I was closest to in my adult life besides my wife. When he passed, it just it hit me, and I was like in a tailspin for 2 weeks, and I was just like, barely motivated to do anything. I just really had to do deep emotional processing. But I realized I never lived in any one city more than 6 years growing up, and I had a lot of 6-year friendships. It's like repeating the pattern of be friends with 6 years, move on. It's like repeating childhood patterns. And I was friends with him from like '08, and I was like, holy crap! Like I've known this guy longer and been close to him longer than anyone besides my wife. So I really gave myself time to emotionally process his death. But the other thing is, his dad worked with Fernie and Marcos, and Iris he was not close with his dad either. So we really encouraged each other to be the best husbands possible. When we were having challenges in our marriage, we would encourage each other and ask each other questions. How do you deal with this situation? And just sometimes just having that little sounding board helps you push through challenging seasons when you're thinking about giving up, on relationships, just like we think about giving up on business. And his passing, I just want to acknowledge him, that we should give ourselves time to process the losses. And then number two, life isn't a dress rehearsal. When I was in the Philippines in 2012, I met the owners of what was the largest producing gold mine in all of Asia. This is a potential $10 to $20 billion asset. So my friend Aris passed. I'm like, screw it. I'm not going to play small and think that, I need to do something else before I could pursue a potential $20 billion asset. I don't need to be a billionaire to prove anything to anybody. I mean, I love people and just serve people, whether it's a homeless person in my wife's hometown in the Philippines, or whether it's, the richest guy in the world. Like, they're a person, I'm going to show them love. I'm going to look to be a good friend to them, because we all need friends. Right. But yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge him and say, this is something that's happened for me in the last couple of months, where the resources are coming together. I mean, I may be buying a potential $20 billion asset in the next 6 months. And I have a way to monetize it and a way to use it to actually produce a lot of wealth for the world. So anyways, I just wanted to share that. I think it's good to have a BHAG and to acknowledge sometimes you know about something and you think you're not good enough for it. Wayne's World, we're not worthy, we're not worthy. We have those thoughts sometimes.
Oh, I have.
I think it's important to realize, I don't just share to the audience, you are worthy of whatever your dream is. And don't wait till you're worth a certain amount of money or you get a thumbs up from some certain person before you pursue it, because we have one life to live.
Yes, we do. And I think Dr. Wayne Dyer says, if we're always striving and never arriving, it's not very much fun. But with that, I want to say thank you, guys. Thank you so much. And I had to chuckle when you said this isn't a dress rehearsal, because every single show, I say that. Oh. We get one shot at life. This isn't a dress rehearsal. It's our job to make the most of it. And so I had to chuckle. Every show that gets said.
I have to just say I'm honored to be on your wavelength. And that's why I wear my purple suit today.
I love it.
This is St. Patrick's month, so I got my purple shamrock tie.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I get the little shamrocks. And you've been an inspiration for me, girl. So I thank you for who you are and the way that you're using your talents to better the world.
Well, thank you, and the feeling is mutual, and you know that. I tell you that when we talk every time. I want to thank you guys for spending a little over an hour with us here on the Drop-In. And last thing, how can they get your book? What's the easiest way for the folks in all over the world to check you out? How can they keep up?
Yeah, my name's David Roy Newby. It means beloved King Newby, sort of hilarious. So sometimes in business meetings, I'll be like, hey, I'm beloved King Newby, also known as David, but davidroynewby.com. It's ROYNEWBY. And then this latest book, Beyond Billions, there's beyondbillions.com. There's a links to the Audible or the Kindle or the hardcover.
Cool. Did you do the audio on the book?
I did the audio.
You did. Yes.
I thought about hiring like a British dude, like Robert Kiyosaki had that book, Cash Flow Quadrant.
Yeah.
I had the audio of that in my 20s, and I listened to it like 50 times. You know, some British dude, and I'm like, Robert Kiyosaki's a Japanese dude from Hawaii.
Right.
But it's a British dude. It was always so funny to me. So, like, I thought about doing a British guy, but I'm like, no, let me do this because this is my heart. This is, you know, something God gave me to share. So, even though I don't have the best speaking voice, let me go ahead and
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm super stoked to hear that because I was just looking into my new book, making an audio book, and I'm like, should I do it myself or should I hire somebody to do it? And I think I'm going to do it myself. I'm like, it's my book. I love this book. I think I'm going to do the audio myself. So
people hear the conviction and the passion, like that it's really from you. But some dirty secret in the publishing world, most celebrities hire a ghostwriter to write their book.
Yeah.
So when you actually write, I've written every word of my book. I do pay editors and proofreaders,
Right,
to get it nice and concise, because I can talk, as you can see. But yeah, I think it'll be amazing to have it be in your voice.
Yeah, that'll be a good time. But with that, I want to thank you guys. Hopefully you took notes. Reach out to David. Go to davidroynewby.com. Check out the book. If you have any questions, you can funnel them through me. I can try to find the answers for you. I know you're on Facebook as well.
Yeah, that's my name on all the social media too.
Okay,
Twitter, cool. Instagram. I'm an old fogey. I don't think I'm ever gonna get Snapchat or that other stuff, but yeah. I have Instagram and Twitter and Facebook.
Me too. So again, I want to thank you guys so much for being here. And remember, this isn't a dress rehearsal. We get one shot at life, and it is our job to make the most of it. So make the most of the days you have, because you never guaranteed tomorrow. So make the most of today, make the most of this minute, and just thank you once again for sitting through this episode. I know you got a lot out of it. Thank you again, Dave. I appreciate it. And with that, this is David Roy Newby. I am Garold Vallie, and this is The Drop-In.